Hello, and welcome to the NEH Institute's webinar for prospective applicants. Today's webinar will provide an overview of the program and application process.
First, some introductions. My name is LaQuanda Walters Cooper, Program Officer in the Division of Education Programs and co-leader of the Institute's program.
And I'm Emily Brantley, Program Analyst for the Institute's program. Together, we represent a team of approximately 10 other program officers. This presentation will roughly follow the formatting of our Notice of Funding Opportunity, or NOFO, if you wish to follow along on your copy as we go. While today's presentation will not cover every detail contained in the NOFOs, we will give a general overview, highlight some of the most important parts, and point out areas that are different this year. Please note that we will also host a live Q&A session for this grant program on Wednesday, January 12, 2022. You can access the session via the link on the program resource page. To access the NOFOs, visit the website for the program you're interested in applying for. Scroll down to Step 1 and Application Materials. The links for these pages are included in the description section below this video for easy access.
The NOFO is your blueprint for how to build a strong application, so we encourage you to become familiar with it and use it as your roadmap. The NOFO is organized into 3 general sections. The first section, pages 1 through 10, describes what this program is about, what we're looking for, who's eligible, etc. The second section, or section D, pages 10 through 30, lays out the specifics of what exactly should be included in your application, including formatting guidance. The third section, on pages 30 to 31, lists the review criteria for an application. As you develop your application, you'll need to cross-reference between sections 1 and 2 and keep the review criteria in mind in section 3. Before we begin discussing the Institute's program, we want to provide some clarification, especially for those of you who may be familiar with our previous program offerings. What you might remember as seminars and institutes is simply institutes moving forward. Seminars are no longer offered as part of this grant program. Institutes are 1 to 4 week professional development programs that provide stipends for a nationwide audience of educators, either at the K-12 or higher education level, to deepen their understanding of a variety of humanities topics and enrich their capacity for effective teaching and scholarship. Applications due in February 2022 for this current cycle are for programs taking place in 2023.
Institutes should immerse participants in studying significant humanities topics in new or existing areas of study. They should kindle participants' spark for teaching and foster lasting and impactful intellectual and professional communities. What's probably most important is the content. As you're applying to the National Endowment for the Humanities, it is essential to keep the humanities at the core of your project. We recommend grounding your proposed project in significant humanities texts and resources and using multiple approaches to explore your topic in a way that's both rigorous and collegial. Institutes host 25 to 36 participants and are designed primarily for an audience of classroom educators, be they K-12 teachers or faculty who teach undergraduate students. That said, there are limited spots for other educators like librarians, museum professionals, and academic personnel to also participate, provided that their participation advances project goals and enhances their own professional work. You must draw from a nationwide audience of educators. Proposed projects aimed specifically at educators from one municipality, state, or region are not appropriate for this grant program. We encourage you to seek a broad and diverse participant cohort with a diversity of disciplines and academic backgrounds, but you may target more focused audiences by designating additional special qualifications. For example, you could require proficiency in a foreign language, say Latin, for a project focused on Roman literature. For K-12 projects, all K-12 teachers are eligible for all K-12 projects and should not be excluded based on what grade they teach. Note, though, that your application must state which grade level or levels your project is primarily designed for: K through 5, 6 through 8, and/or 9 through 12. This information can be found in the Participant Eligibility Criteria section on pages 9 through 10 of the NOFO. Institutes offer two categories of funding, Level 1 and Level 2. Level 1 is for new, first-time projects only. Projects previously funded by NEH cannot make minor revisions and resubmit as a Level 1. Both the topic and subject matter must be fundamentally new to be eligible for a Level 1 submission. For example, a previously funded institute cannot change out a few texts, change the project's title, and apply as a new Level 1 project. However, by introducing new themes, new content, and new scholars, the project team could potentially create a fundamentally new Level 1 institute. Previously funded organizations or directors can bring in new projects under Level 1 because Level 1 is tied to the project and content rather than to the organization or director. But if in doubt, we advise former NEH directors to consult with program staff for application guidance. New, first-time projects may apply as Level 1 or Level 2, whereas previously funded repeat projects must apply as Level 2. The main difference between the two levels is that Level 1 features only moderate follow-up and outreach with a standard 15-month grant period. Level 1 projects need not have extensive dissemination components, but we encourage applicants to consider including modest outreach, such as project websites, listserv messages, social media posts, and conference presentations. For Level 1 projects, these activities should be described in Section G of the narrative and not in Section H. Level 2 adds 9 months to the grant period and allows up to an additional $15,000 for a robust dissemination plan. Dissemination plans for Level 2 projects should bring the work of the project to audiences beyond the initial group of participants in substantive and effective ways. We've included some ideas here, and you are free to develop others. We encourage you to include formats that are digital, open access, and sustainable, but whatever formats you choose, focus on dissemination activities with strong and measurable impacts because you'll want to include these immediate outcomes in your required white paper and final reports.
Now, let's discuss format and program of study. Institutes can offer their program of study in three formats: residential, virtual, or combined. In the residential format, all participants attend the program on site. In the virtual format, all participants attend the program online, whether synchronously or asynchronously. In the combined format, all participants attend part of the program online and part of the program on site. All participants must be engaged in the same format simultaneously. Participant stipends are determined by NEH based on both the format and duration of the institute. One set of rates for residential and combined programs, and another for fully virtual programs. Institute's programs of study can take place before, during, and/or after the traditional summer season, and sessions can be offered in consecutive weeks and/or spread out over a longer period of time. Institutes run from 1 to 4 weeks, and for combined and virtual programs who might be spreading their sessions out, 1 week should be understood as 5 to 6 days of structured study. Your project team must include a project director or co-director team. Directors should be established humanities scholars and are responsible for all the project's intellectual and administrative aspects. It is not required for project directors to be employed by or affiliated with the applicant institution. We actually see this pretty often. Another thing we often see are institutes being hosted off-site with partnering institutions. For example, in one recently funded project, the applicant institution, the University of Connecticut, ran its program on Gullah culture at partnering museums in Savannah, Georgia. If you're planning a collaborative effort such as this, we recommend that your letters of institutional support and letters of commitment directly acknowledge support for these partnerships. If applicable, you must state how co-director teams are dividing responsibilities and identify a qualified replacement for each director. K-12 institutes must include at least one K-12 leader to be involved throughout project planning and implementation. This person should have demonstrated excellence and leadership experience in K-12 classrooms and with K-12 curricula. For repeat directors and institutes, superstar past participants may be a good place to start. All teams will likely also include additional visiting scholars and academic staff who bring different perspectives or resources to your project. Teams will also likely include administrative and technology support staff, such as project managers, instructional designers, or technological experts, depending on the proposed project's design. All teams must include an institutional grant administrator who is different from your project directors.
If you have reached this point in our presentation and you're still interested in applying to direct an institute, make sure that you have an eligible organization on board with your project because you cannot apply for this grant as an individual. Federal entities, foreign organizations, and for-profit organizations are also ineligible to apply. NEH may not award grants to non-federal entities whose projects are so closely intertwined with another federal entity that the project takes on characteristics of that federal entity's own authorized activities, or projects that directly benefit another federal entity. Note that institutes and projects in our sibling program, Landmarks of American History and Culture, cannot be offered back-to-back or repeated in consecutive summers. For example, if I was funded to direct an institute on Women in the American Revolution in summer 2021, I could not apply to direct that same institute in summer 2022. But I could apply to direct a Women in the Suffrage Movement Institute in summer 2022 instead. Please note that directors who postponed their summer 2022 institutes to summer 2023 may not apply to direct what would be a second institute in summer 2023.
And finally, a brief review of NEH's areas of special interest, especially a more perfect union, a special initiative advancing civic education and commemorating the nation's 250th anniversary. Please know that institutes do not have to fit within or address the NEH areas of interest listed in the NOFOs, and these simply allow NEH to feature certain themes. So now that you know the program, it's time to apply. The first step is to ensure that your SAM.gov and grants.gov registrations and passwords are current, because NEH will not grant deadline extensions for delayed registration. Registration in these systems can take up to a month to complete, so check on this straight away. Remember, you are applying as an institution, so you will probably be using your institution's account information. Your institutional grant administrator or other grant management or sponsored program staff are great contacts for guidance if you're not sure where to find this information. When you're in grants.gov, be sure to select or have your grant administrator select the appropriate package based on your project type so your application is evaluated appropriately. That is, be sure to select K-12 versus higher ed correctly. This is a very common error, so be sure to double check with your grant administrator that you or they have selected the correct package for your project. As we mentioned before, the NOFOs are your blueprint for building your application. Section D2, beginning on page 10 of the NOFOs, is probably the most important part because this is going to be the content of your application. We encourage you to read this section and follow its directions very closely. Throughout this section, there are a lot of details on what content to include, where to include it, how to title it and subtitle it, how to name your attachment files, what order to put them in, etc. Next, we want to highlight important information regarding document formatting, specific details of which can be found on pages 10 through 11 of the NOFOs. First, a new and important change to the grant program regarding spacing. Unless otherwise specified, narratives and attachments should be single-spaced. Second, be advised that applications with components that exceed stated page limits will be automatically declared ineligible. For more specific information on page limits, required and conditionally required documents and attachments, and file naming protocols, you are encouraged to review the chart on page 11 of the NOFO. Third, all attachments must be PDFs. The grants.gov system will allow uploads of Word and Excel files, but it will also automatically mark your application as ineligible on our end, and we will likely not be able to review it. So please take the time and check that all your files, including your budget justification, are saved as PDFs. This formatting is required, and it also ensures that reviewers can read through your application easily and know where to go to find what they're looking for. Your project narrative and the subsequent attachment should be succinct, self-explanatory, well-organized, and free of technical terms and jargon. Think about balancing breadth and depth and striking a balance between being clear and concise while also being sufficiently descriptive and illustrative. The reviewers and the review process are your audience, so write for both generalists and specialists. The narrative is the weightiest part of your application because it carries the bulk of the intellectual content of your proposal.
Some things we want to highlight for you as you develop your application's narrative. Section A, the nature of the request, should be just one brief paragraph providing only the facts requested. This section functions as an abstract to orient the reviewer and to give us at NEH the most basic info about your project from the beginning. Sections Bravo and Delta are where you'll really get into the details. Section B, intellectual rationale, is where you're going to explain why your topic is important and why it matters. Section D, format and program of study, is where you'll dig into the specifics of how you're doing it. For applicants designing virtual projects, be sure to look for new cues throughout the NOFO to share information about the platforms you'll be using, the audiovisual resources that will support you, etc. This will also be important for applicants designing projects in combined formats, as you will need to describe the logistics of both the residential and virtual components of your project. For repeat or level 2 projects, be sure to look for cues woven throughout the NOFO where you're asked to provide additional information. For example, in Section C, Project Development, previously offered level 2 projects must also include a section, no more than 2 paragraphs, on how your previous experience is shaping your current proposal. Reviewers appreciate responsiveness and growth in repeat projects. New projects should omit this section. While it's not officially required, we advise level 2 projects to use those 2 extra pages you get for your narrative to further develop the sections on project development and project dissemination. The components of your narrative are tied to specific review criteria. Be sure to familiarize yourself with these on page 30 and 31 of the NOFO so you'll know how reviewers will be asked to think about your proposal. The research and related budget form will automatically integrate into your application, so you do not have to include it as an attachment. This is a form used across the federal government, so it's important that you read the NOFO guidelines on how exactly to fill it out for this grant program's purposes. Some other things to note: all projects are required to submit a budget justification to complement the budget form itself. Be sure to attach this as a PDF. Compensation for project directors is typically calculated based on salary, fringe benefits, and project time. There are funds set aside to secure the services of replacement directors not employed by the applicant institution. And stipend amounts vary depending on both format and duration. For attachments 2 and 3, all projects must submit both an academic schedule detailing the daily schedule for the program of study and a list of readings, and a work plan detailing the activities that occur during the grant period before and after that program of study. For Attachment 6, previously funded Level 2 projects must submit participant evaluations from their most recent NEH summer program. New projects should not submit anything in this section.
There are several things that we recommend you avoid in your application. You can find a more complete listing of funding restrictions on pages 29 to 30 of the NOFOs, but we want to caution you against some of the most common pitfalls we see in applications. The NEH cannot fund the promotion of any one political, religious, or ideological point of view, advocacy for a particular program of social or political action, or support of specific public policies or legislation. Instead, we recommend that applications include diverse and varied voices, scholars, and sources on your topics. Root contemporary real world issues in the humanities and focus on that humanities content in your applications, and avoid buzzwords and jargon. The NEH also cannot fund projects that fall outside of the humanities. We most often see this with projects that try to incorporate the creation or performance of art, or projects that involve participants developing products rooted in creative writing, autobiography, memoir, or creative nonfiction. We also sometimes see this in projects that focus heavily on pedagogy or methodology. We value the integration of effective pedagogy and sound methodology in Institute's projects, but your project must center humanities content. The NEH cannot fund tuition fees for participants or student assistants. Participants are paid stipends, and student assistants can be paid members of the project team, but tuition is not an allowable expense. The NEH cannot fund things like socials, alcohol, or most meals, though there are some exceptions regarding working lunches, bottled water, light refreshments, etc.
Projects funded in this grant program will be responsible for a series of NEH reports, which you can find detailed on pages 33 to 34 of the NOFO, but we'd like to draw your attention to the additional requirement for Level 2 projects of creating a white paper for a public audience at the end of your grant period. A few reminders of dates. We are accepting optional drafts until January 19, 2022. Potential applicants may send draft narratives to the Institute's program inbox, and a program officer will review your draft and provide you with feedback. Our goal is to leave you with at least a week or two to make revisions before the final deadline, but the sooner you can get your draft in, the better. The narrative is really the key application component we want to see, but you're welcome to include other attachments and the budget, particularly if you have a specific question you'd like the program officer to address. If you're struggling to pull together a full narrative in time for the draft deadline, you're also welcome to send in a sketch or outline of your project for more general feedback. Some feedback is better than no feedback. Final applications are due by 11:59 p.m. Eastern on February 22nd, 2022. Don't wait until the last minute in case of technical issues, and to account for processing time to validate in the grants.gov system. It's also a good idea, especially if you're at a larger institution, to check with your institutional grant administrator or your grants office to see if they have an earlier internal deadline you'll also need to be aware of. Once you've pressed send, congratulations on submitting your application. Now the waiting game begins. In April, applications will go to our peer review panels for initial review. In early July, they will go before the NEH's National Council. By law, final funding decisions will be made by the NEH chair, and we expect decision notifications to be made in August for grants beginning in October.
Regardless of the outcome of your application, you can get the most out of your relationship with the NEH by asking for your reviewer comments, contacting us for additional feedback or guidance, volunteering to serve as an NEH panelist, and applying again for this and other grant opportunities. We're nearly done, but before we sign off, we want to point you in the direction of some other great resources on our website that you can refer to as you're getting ready to apply. On the program website, if you scroll down, you will find some program resource documents such as our FAQs, principles of civility, listings of previously funded projects, and a link to our list of current 2022 projects. You can also find our list of 2022 programs on the NEH website by navigating to Grants, then clicking on Professional Development, and clicking on Professional Development again. Here, you can read about upcoming projects and look through actual project websites to get a feel for what these programs look like fleshed out in action. Below the program resources, you'll see a handful of sample application narratives. We recommend looking through all of these for both K-12 and higher ed to get a feel for what a well-written narrative looks like. With that, thank you so much for joining us. Here is our contact information, which is also listed online and in the NOFOs. And please don't hesitate to reach out with questions and drafts. We look forward to hearing from you, and we wish you the best of luck.